Hello, my name is Norio Hayakawa, former Southwest Regional Director for the Civilian Intelligence Network, a nationwide, loosely knit network of intelligence gatherers and analyzers that exchange information, evaluate information on the government's deep black projects and also the covert operations programs. Our particular emphasis is on the activities currently being conducted at Area 51 and also at some secret aerospace facilities in Southern California. In 1990, I had a tremendous opportunity to accompany a Japanese television crew to the outer perimeters of Area 51. What the crew and I witnessed over there completely changed my outlook on the so-called UFO phenomenon. Since this video was produced, I have acquired more new information on Area 51. For example, the Air Force recently decided to withdraw more than 4,000 acres of land surrounding the Groom Lake area. This illegal seizure of public land clearly indicates that the government is completely trying to keep this a secret, a dark secret to us. We need to know what's going on behind this shadow of secrecy, particularly since our hard-earned tax dollars may be being used at this facility for some ominous projects. Area 51 is the nation's leading-edge technological center for military warfare, a new type of weaponry, and perhaps some simulation technology, mind control technology. These things could definitely be used in the near future. I believe so. At the public hearing this year in Las Vegas, where I was fortunate enough to be one of the 20 speakers among the 300 attendees that opposed the government's illegal seizure of land, I spoke at the hearing, and on the way back from the hearing, I decided to take one final look at the Area 51, outer perimeters of Area 51. This time, we decided to go to the northeastern corner of the land adjacent to Area 51. And lo and behold, when we were watching the hills beyond, suddenly a bright, shining, metallic object appeared and just stood motionless, hovered in front of the hill. This was so exciting to me, and this is an indication that the government is now opening up the second stage of its secret program, the UAV, unmanned aerial vehicles, and many other technological innovations that could definitely affect each one of us in the coming next few years, which I believe is the grand deception that's coming up in the very next few years, 1995, 1996, 1997. This could drastically change our way of living. And this is the reason why this video is very important. I believe that you will see it when you see this video. I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you very much. My name is Norio Hayakawa, and I hereby declare that after having researched extensively on this topic for many years, especially on this particular topic right here, for several years, I had a unique opportunity to accompany an 8-member crew of Nippon Television Network on Wednesday, February the 21st, 1990, to the outer perimeters of a top-secret military scientific installation in Nevada known as Area 51. Area 51 is located in the northeastern corner of a vast, desolate stretch of land known as the Nevada Test Site, a portion of which includes the Nellis Air Force Test Range, but has practically little to do with nuclear testing. It is located approximately 125 miles north-northwest of Las Vegas, Nevada, and consists of the Groom Lake and the Papoose Lake complexes. The eastern portion of the latter complexes is known as the S4 site. Now, this entire area is under the strictest control of airspace R-4808N with unlimited, quote, ceiling, unquote. prohibiting any entry therein of air traffic, civilian or military, unless special clearance for such entry is secured well in advance. By land, the area is meticulously patrolled 24 hours a day by 3 tiers of external security, even though it is conveniently covered by the looming jumbled hills that cover north of the Papoose Lake area and the Groom Mountains that cover north-northeast of the Groom Lake area, making it impossible for anyone to see the facilities without first climbing atop the rugged mountain ranges which became off limits to the public since 1985. The outer northeastern perimeters of this area, located in the Tickaboo Valley, come under the geographical jurisdiction of Lincoln County and are relegated to the Bureau of Land Management, BLM. Yet it is considered highly unadvisable for anyone to even enter the main county dirt road, known as the Groom Road, which begins its southwestern extension towards Groom Lake from a point midway between mile marker 34 and 33 on Highway 375, and leads through the Guard Shack located 2.5 miles northeast of the Groom Lake complexes. The first line of exterior security forces, known as GP patrols, the Groom proper patrols in Bronco-type four-wheel drive vehicles, sometimes drive around at night with their lights off on various county dirt roads adjacent to the outer demilitarized zone, intimidating any civilian vehicle that tries to enter those access roads off of Highway 375, located on public land. The GP patrols themselves, however, are strictly ordered to avoid any direct contact with civilians. They are only instructed to radio the Lincoln County Sheriff immediately should anyone be spotted driving on any of those dirt roads. A small town of Alamo, which is a few miles south of Ash Springs on Highway 93, approximately 40 miles southeast of the mailbox area, is where the headquarters of Lincoln County Sheriff are located. The dispatched sheriff patrol, in turn, will approach the civilian vehicles and will initiate the interrogation. The standard warning issued by the county sheriff is for curiosity seekers to stay off of county dirt roads at all times. The only area allowed by the sheriff for such curiosity seekers to congregate is at an open area near a black mailbox located at the south side of Highway 375 between mile marker 29 and 30. Even then, the sheriff patrol will routinely stop by during the evening to check on the cars parked at the mailbox area. Moreover, it is our understanding, based on information provided by a highly reliable source connected to a Special Service Division of the United States Navy Operations Center, that the mailbox area is constantly being monitored by high-powered, state-of-the-art infrared telescopes set atop Bald Mountain, which is 10 miles west of the area, the highest peak in the Groom Mountain Range. A dirt road extending southward from the mailbox area, known as the Mailbox Road, intersects the aforementioned Groom Road, which goes east to west, at approximately 3.5 miles south of the highway. It is important to mention here that precisely at 6 a.m. every weekday morning, an unmarked bus carrying a group of what appears to be construction-type workers takes this dusty Groom Road westbound, heading towards the Groom Lake area. The same bus returns at 4 p.m. eastbound to take Highway 375 to drop off the workers precisely at 4:30 p.m. at an open space parking area of an abandoned truck stop, the Crystal Springs truck stop, located on the east side of Highway 93 at the juncture of Highway 375, just a few miles north of Ash Springs. The maps are here. At the present time, there seems to be no single controlling agency that would give any information out to the public on Area 51, even though it is within the jurisdiction of the Nellis Air Force Test Range. In October of 1988, a special program was aired nationwide on an independent network produced by LBS Communications entitled UFO Cover-Up Live, in which this specific geographical section of Nevada was briefly mentioned. It was mentioned about 3 seconds, that's it. By early fall of 1989, A radio station in Las Vegas, KVEG, was airing a nightly controversial talk show hosted by Billy Goodman, on which a gentleman by the name of Robert Lazar was a frequent guest by telephone interview. He had been declaring that he was a former government scientist that had been employed for 6 months or so at a super-secret facility known as S4, located within Area 51. He stated that he had been compensated by the Department of the Navy for his work at the facility, which involved duplication of both gravity wave amplifiers and antimatter propulsion systems used in extremely revolutionary type of aircrafts, in quote. What he seemed to have insinuated subsequently on the interviews was that an amazing advanced technology exists at S4 site, with interaction going on between our top scientists and military personnel and some alleged quote-unquote entities representing that superior technology, and that our select pilots are receiving flight instructions for maneuvering these crafts at the site. Now, after listening to that program, I wrote about the area to a well-known Japanese magazine, and subsequently a Japanese television network, the Nippon Television, soon heard about Area 51 through the writer with whom I had corresponded. The Japanese network finally contacted me in December of 1989, telling me that they would be willing to come to the States to do a documentary on it. Now, it had also sent a producer's representative to interview Mr. Lazar prior to their arrival. On Wednesday, February 21st of 1990, we interviewed Mr. Lazar at his residence in Las Vegas and was assured by him that the crafts would be test flown after sundown, and that we would be able to see part of the test flights slightly above the Jumble Hills and the Groom Mountains from a distance if we would only go to the mailbox area on Highway 375. What I witnessed there that evening, along with the others of the crew, completely brought about a new chapter in my 30-year pursuit of the so-called UFO phenomenon. For until that evening, I had never yet observed anything in my life that I could confidently describe as a bona fide UFO, and never under such predetermined conditions involving specific time and location. It was there at the mailbox area that the production crew and I witnessed and videotaped several definite maneuvers of brilliantly lit, orange, yellowish aerial crafts making extremely unorthodox flight patterns, including sudden acceleration, descension, ascension, and without question exerting a force of multiple G's under extremely limited space and time. By the way, 1 G refers to the amount of force exerted by normal gravity. Space shuttle astronauts endure about 3 Gs during the acceleration of blastoff. Between 7 and 8 Gs, the force of acceleration drains the blood from the brain and unconsciousness ensues. At 45 Gs, a 180-pound pilot will be crushed to death beneath a weight of more than 4 tons. We're talking about multiple Gs. We even saw a zigzag type movement, all of which were inconceivable by conventional aeronautics. However, the interesting thing is that McDonnell Douglas came up with this information that now they are able to withstand several Gs. There are also helmets being developed right now that accommodates this matter. This successful documentation, at least in my estimation, of a test flight of highly advanced, unconventional craft that the United States government seems to possess in utmost secrecy, definitely reinforced my growing suspicion of the ulterior purposes behind at least one aspect of the so-called UFO phenomenon. By the way, the test flights are still ongoing at Area 51, even right now, under the code name of Project Red Light, and are covertly being funded by the so-called Black Project program, a major part of which seems to be managed by the Office of Naval Intelligence. Now, the test flights also seem to be conducted mainly from around late October through May. 4 evenings a week, that is to say Monday to Thursday and Friday morning. They usually take place from about an hour to an hour and a half after sundown and go on intermittently till about around 10 o'clock p.m., resuming at approximately 4:45 a.m. and ending just before 6 a.m. And each flight takes usually about half a minute, 2 minutes, sometimes a minute and a half. The main tests, however, still seem to be taking place on Wednesdays, substantiating the claim of Mr. Lazar and being verified by a growing number of witnesses, eyewitnesses, that continue to go to the area even now. Now, it is to be noted, and this is a very strange thing, that usually a day or two prior to significant test flights, if the test flight is significant, a vehicle traffic counter is now laid on Highway 93 at approximately a mile and a half north of Ash Springs, right before the juncture of Highway 375. The other counter is set up about a mile or so west upon entering Highway 375. And the obvious question is, in such desolate, less traveled areas of Nevada, why should there be such traffic counters installed on undivided, lonely highways? It is now my belief that the number of cars being registered that head out west on Highway 375 at such times, particularly like in clusters or in caravans, is relayed to several of the security posts at Area 51, including the main observation post high atop the previously mentioned Bald Mountain. The February 21st, 1990 expedition, by the way, was instrumental in the subsequent production of a 2-hour documentary program entitled Saturday Super Special, televised throughout Japan on March 24th, 1990, which was seen by more than 28 million viewers on prime time. The entire program dealt with Area 51 and also the crew's pursuit of an alleged biogenetics laboratory thought to be located just outside of Dulce, a tiny town in northwestern New Mexico, about 95 miles northwest of Los Alamos. It is my desire right now to present a fascinating insight into a conditioning process taking place currently in the world, which will be a basis for an incredible series of events to take place, I contend, and I'm convinced that sometime in the fall of 1995. The following may initially seem to be nothing more than a wild hypothetical scenario imagined by a fanatical doomsday prophet or an extreme conspiracy buff of some sort, but nevertheless the unprecedented global transformation taking place rapidly at this very moment strangely seems to be fitting into an emerging pattern for such a scenario. Now, all these drastic changes taking place, whether in world politics, economy, science, technology, or even in religion, sheer coincidence, or is there some unseen, pre-planned design behind them all? There's no question in my mind that the world is headed for some climactic moment or some type of paradigm shift as it continues its thrust towards the year 2000. I am convinced that UFOs, or at least what the public continues to perceive as UFOs, will play a significant role in bringing about such a paradigm shift. It is my belief that UFOs are somehow linked to a sinister, quote-unquote, occultic force present in the world today that is manipulating a de facto secret world government of a sort, preparing to ingeniously stage a counterfeit extraterrestrial contact landing and to simulate an extraterrestrial threat of invasion in order to urgently and ultimately bring about a delusive, what I call, New World Order. The amazing thing, however, is that the real guiding force behind this staged event may indeed be what could only be described as highly intelligent but deceptive, quote, ultra-dimensional negative entities conveniently materializing in disguise as extraterrestrial, quote, aliens, unquote. Furthermore, I believe that the grand deception, which will be orchestrated in 1995, will occur concurrently with a rapid series of shocking, incredible events, beginning with a Russia-backed Arab Confederacy's disastrous attempt
to invade Israel. And I'm basing some of these from publications such as the Intelligence Digest in Britain. The world will be astounded by the sudden, unexpected move, fully backed by a massive nationalistic military force of a restructured Russian Federation. Although initially cornered into this situation by increased pressure and dexterous power play of the rapidly rising Islamic elements within the Federation. There's a tremendously growing Islamic element within the various republics of the disintegrating, apparently, Soviet Union. Now, this dramatic invasion and the ensuing catastrophic conflagration in the Middle East will immediately be followed by unprecedented, I'm convinced, earthquakes worldwide, and a sudden mysterious, quote-unquote, evacuation or, quote-unquote, removal, depending upon one's viewpoint, of a segment of the population worldwide, all of which will culminate in an urgent official declaration of a totalitarian type New World Order that will last, I'm convinced, for 7 years upon its inception. The shocking series of events will, needless to say, put millions and millions of people worldwide in absolute stupor for weeks, during which time an ingeniously executed, extremely effective, multi-leveled mind control program will be activated to calm down the stunned populace. The most difficult challenge that will be faced by the leadership in control of the New World Order, which will be initiated at that time, will be how best to explain away these shocking, unprecedented concurrences of events, particularly the unexplained disappearances of a segment of the population worldwide. I believe that at that juncture, a dynamic, charismatic leader who will arise out of EC, the European Community, by then known as the United States of Europe. And I'm convinced that this person is right now existing in Europe. Possibly he's about 29 years old. Who will appear live in a worldwide television news conference and will offer a brilliant explanation to sedate the public. He will ingeniously claim that the incident was a carefully planned, massive, extraterrestrial, quote-unquote, abductions operation necessary for the temporary removal and relocation of certain undesirable, uncooperative sector of society whose continued presence therein would hamper the realization of global transformation into a true, quote-unquote, new age. The extraterrestrials, then, would offer assistance in bringing the world into a new paradigm shift. Somehow, the public will be convinced and will accept his explanation, at which point he will announce that he will assume the leadership of the New World Order. By the way, an effective mind control system is no longer confined to the realm of science fiction. The government's mind control research and ongoing experiments thought to be conducted covertly may have some significant military application. Although it was in Russia that the first practical applications of parapsychological researches were demonstrated that led to initial Russian dominance in psychotronics. The United States government-sponsored researchers seem to have wasted no time in securing close collaboration from many of such Russian experts and subsequently opening up newer areas in strategic application. The United States Naval Research Laboratory, in particular, seems to have a parapsychology research unit. There's no question about it. That coordinates its research activities with DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. It is my understanding that some of their activities conducted under the auspices of the Office of Naval Intelligence are being held at locations such as at Area 51. ELF, which is the extreme low frequency or extra low frequency wave emitting devices, are here. Scalar machines, electromagnetic beam weapons, and highly defined hologramic projections are just a few examples of the many new types of mind control weaponry that the government seems to have developed in the past 3 decades or so. Newest researches on special types of hallucinatory and memory tampering drugs are part of a growing, quote-unquote, arsenal that the United States Naval Intelligence boasts to have developed in its own parapsychology mind control unit. And let me read just a couple of information that I just received a few days ago. There's now a radio hypnotic intracerebral control. I'm assuming what this is. This calls for the implantation of a very small electronic micro radio receiver. It acts as a stimulator which will stimulate a muscle or electronic brain response. This can set off a hypno-program given in the victim or subject which would elicit a preconditioned behavior. Another thing is the EDOM, electronic dissolution of memory. Calls for remotely controlled production within the brain of acidic choline which blocks transmission of nerve impulses in the brain, which results in a sort of selective amnesia. In the hands of certain units within the intelligence community, both of these methods were and are, even right now, widely used. Government-sponsored genetics researchers and biotechnology experts at New Mexico's Los Alamos National Laboratory are said to be conducting in-depth studies not only on the total effects of mind control upon human behavioral patterns, but also on its possible applications relative to such areas as genetic engineering and exploration of the human genome. A large underground genetics laboratory is thought to be located just outside of Dulce, New Mexico, a tiny town in the midst of Jicarilla Apache Indian reservations located about 95 miles northwest of Los Alamos and 100 miles east of Highway 666. The only stretch of highway in the United States with that designation, Highway 666. And the only highway that links the 4 states of Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. Perhaps it may just be a pure coincidence that this highway, befittingly named Highway 666, the only stretch of highway in the United States with that name, which originates in southeast Arizona and goes up north, cuts into northwestern New Mexico right near the Four Corners area, an area that happens to have one of the most consistently concentrated UFO sighting reports in the country since 1947, Four Corners area. Rumors even abound that a mysterious craft of unknown origin had crash-landed in 1948 near Aztec, which is a small town located roughly midway between Dulce and Highway 666. This entire Four Corners area, especially northwestern New Mexico and southwestern Colorado, even extending for that matter to the entire southern tip of Colorado, also has had some of the most concentrated reports of unexplained cattle mutilations in the nation during the late 70s and early 80s. Was something covertly taking place in those areas? I believe so. Even though we could not locate the alleged underground genetics laboratory in Dulce, when Nippon Television crew and I visited the area in late February of 1990, I had several opportunities to interview scores of local residents there in Dulce that admitted that nightly appearances of mysterious lights, occasionally accompanied by unmarked black helicopters, darting over into and out of nearby Archuleta Mesa and Archuleta Mountains, were quite common during the late 70s and early 80s. Many of them even claimed to have spotted, on many occasions, military-type trucks and jeeps, as well as government vans passing through Dulce and loitering around the nearby mesas. Occasionally, even some black limousines carrying what appeared to be, quote-unquote, CIA agent types were claimed to have been sighted loitering around the foothills of other nearby mesas. As far as advanced biotechnology is concerned, I have no doubt that a microchip implantation technology is being perfected in which tiny microchips could be implanted in our circulatory systems, vital organs and tissues if need be, for whatever purpose the future may require. It is my conclusion that a large-scale research has been completed by the government with possible assistance from quote-unquote outside sources within the last 20 years or so, utilizing tens of thousands of cattle in the Southwest to conduct this covert experiment. Only recently has science proven that cow hemoglobin could be substituted by utilizing a special purification system with human blood. in situations such as in unforeseen national emergencies. We have reports from Los Angeles Times I have over there that says about this, cow hemoglobin and human blood. I firmly believe that the countdown for this stunning event of 1995 began in 1948. This is very important, ladies and gentlemen. I'm convinced that we are living in the 7-year warning period which began in 1988 when Israel celebrated its 40th anniversary of its none less than miraculous re-establishment as a nation in more than 2,000 years. According to the prophetic calendar based on what is commonly known as biblical eschatology, to which I subscribe, there will yet be 2 more great conflicts in the Middle East involving Israel. Both will be catastrophic in scale as never seen before. As I proposed previously, the first of these disastrous wars, I'm convinced, will take place in 1995 when the Arab Confederacy, backed by a restructured Russian Federation, will make a move towards Israel. The second war, known as the Battle of Armageddon, will take place, I believe, 7 years later when what will then be known as the Far East Confederacy challenges the power axis of Europe-controlled New World Order by marching towards the Middle East with an immense, formidable army never seen before in the history of mankind. The reason for this rapid conclusion, by the way, to the so-called Persian Gulf War of early 1991 this year was none other. This is the only reason that this war took place, Persian Gulf crisis, was none other than to expedite the conditions and create an atmosphere conducive to a temporary Arab-Israeli peace treaty, which will definitely be signed, perhaps, as early as 1992. I do not consider the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait and the subsequent Persian Gulf War to have been a significant Middle East war, simply because Israel was not involved militarily. There have only been 4 Middle East wars so far in which Israel was involved militarily. And please take a note of this. Those took place only in 1948, 1956, 1967, and 1973. The next Middle East war involving Israel will be, and I'm saying this with confidence, in the fall of 1995, as I stated, and possibly around the time of the celebration of the Jewish feast of what I call the Feast of the Trumpets. It is no coincidence, ladies and gentlemen, that heretofore 4 major waves of UFO sighting reports worldwide took place within the general proximity of each of those specific years, 1948, 1956, 1967, and 1973. The next major wave is due just prior to 1995. A few years prior to that, there will be a pseudo-Middle East peace conference, and an attempt has been made to have this conference already, in which a temporary treaty will be signed. It is quite possible that such a treaty could be signed next year, 1992. It is my understanding that the European community, the EC, will even force Israel to sign the treaty if it had not done so by the end of 1992. Although the so-called scientific community at large seems to have ignored the topic one way or the other, the public's fascination with UFOs as a topic well deserving of more serious study has steadily been on the rise, especially within these last 2 decades or so. Aside from the question of whether or not UFOs could indeed be a manifestation of visitation from such presupposed extraterrestrial civilizations, more people now than ever before seem to be accepting the notion that we may not be alone in this vast universe, that since there are billions and billions of sun-like stars that could support planetary systems, there must consequently be a proportionate number of life-supporting planets out there with a possibility of existence of many advanced civilizations or civilizations in various stages of development. On the surface, this seems to be a very logical thing, very logical thing. Unfortunately, this is merely an assumption right now, only pure conjecture at best, at least for the present time. Yet, there is no doubt whatsoever in my mind that UFOs, or at least what the public continues to perceive as UFOs, exist. having been and continue to be cited frequently and consistently across the globe for at least more than 40 years. For reasons unknown, however, UFOs and their alleged occupants, wherever their origins may be, so far seem to have operated in a highly clandestine manner, deliberately demonstrating their evasiveness and avoiding any open contact with the public at large. This has given rise to a growing speculation among certain UFO researchers that indeed official contact may long have taken place, but in utmost secrecy. Now, some even go so far as to say that a secret mutual treaty of some kind had been formalized between the extraterrestrial entities and a human governmental agency representing an alleged secret world government. Now, such a scenario is quite possible and cannot be disproven, but again, it is pure speculation at best. I'm telling this because we must be cautious of such assertions, for this type of exclusive belief systems may be precisely what that secret government is slowly disseminating and manipulating in order to set the stage for a real near future scenario. The extraterrestrial hypothesis of the origins of UFOs and UFOnauts is unquestionably the most prevalent concept held by the majority of those that adamantly assert that UFOs signify actual physical alien visitations from a distant planet in outer space. On the surface, it seems to be the most logical of all the hypotheses, yet it seems to be the one that presents the most problems. It seems to answer many questions, yet at the same time it brings out so much inconsistencies and contradictions. It is my opinion that this exclusive concept that UFOs are unquestionably nut and bolt physical crafts manned by extraterrestrial beings traveling here from a distant planet seems to be the one that is undeniably being promoted and capitalized on by a sinister, quote-unquote, occultic force present in the world at this time. The manipulation of such an exclusive belief system will certainly play, I believe, a major role in a new paradigm shift, as I had mentioned previously, that will be brought upon the world very shortly. It is no longer an exaggeration to state that such a force has definitely succeeded in penetrating and thereby manipulating such, quote-unquote, spontaneous global movements as the so-called New Age movement, which is rapidly gaining adherents among people of all ages and even religious backgrounds. There definitely seems to exist within the top echelons of the New Age movement an element that zealously advocates a quasi-religious, metaphysical concept that exclusively promotes a belief system in, quote-unquote, cosmic or universal, quote-unquote, consciousness, while encouraging occultic communications with extraterrestrial, quote-unquote, avatars and, quote-unquote, ascended masters, and generally downplaying the need for a traditional Judeo-Christian concept of a personal God. Such a belief system facilitates the wholehearted acceptance of UFOs as interplanetary vehicles from yonder, primarily conducting a thorough surveillance of some kind and secondarily revealing themselves to a select few to warn us of the imminent dangers of continued nuclear armament and ecological destruction, a rather reasonable and convenient hypothesis, since UFO seems to have openly begun the manifestation of their presence soon after the first explosion of the atomic bombs in the deserts of New Mexico. Now, this type of thinking seems to be further enhanced by a seemingly dramatic increase recently in the so-called UFO contacts, allegedly claimed by hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people across the globe on an individual basis, including those that even claim to have been abducted by UFOs and released after having been genetically experimented on by the entities inside the craft. Now, yet I must point out that some of the most highly respected UFO researchers in the world today, such as Dr. Jacques Vallée and John A. Keel, seem to have practically abandoned the ET hypothesis due to the insurmountable challenges and questions posed by the increasing inconsistencies and contradictions, particularly in the so-called behavioral patterns observed in many of the alleged activities of these objects and their often reported occupants or entities. Now, we must face the fact that more than 40 years of worldwide UFO sightings in contemporary era, as well as the alleged contacts, have produced not a single hard, physical, tangible, indisputable evidence so far that seems to substantiate the ET visitation hypothesis. Yet, sightings continue to be reported unabated worldwide, and claims of abductions seem to be increasing. Something seems to be conflicting somewhere. But there must be some reason for such inconsistency. It is certain that a dark veil of secrecy has been surrounding the entire phenomenon ever since the beginning days of the so-called modern era of UFO sightings from the late 40s. Even to this day, the questions remain unanswered. Now, did some physical spacecraft of unknown origin actually crash land in several locations in the Southwest, such as at near Roswell and near Aztec in New Mexico, as rumors have it, in 1947 and 1948? Were they actual events, or could they have been some prototype of a series of staged events for some observers or selected observers? Or did a dark supernatural force of some kind enter the earthly dimension, considering the fact that it was coincidentally just around the time of a miraculous development in the Middle East, namely the rebirth of Israel as a nation in 1948? Or is this entire alleged scenario part of a carefully orchestrated disinformation campaign by the government itself, for some reason or the other? These are all questions, I believe, that we must ponder without question. Let me tell you something about the year 1948. It's significant not only that, because right before 1948, 1 year before that, this is when EG&G became incorporated. EG&G is a highly secretive organization that has government contracts in Nevada. The president of EG&G died a couple of years ago. EG&G was created in 1947. The United States Air Force was created in 1947. CIA became basically a reality after OSS in 1947. Amazing things happening in 1947, right 1 year before the establishment of the State of Israel. I'm convinced that 1948 is the beginning of one periodic timetable with which we're living right now. There is no doubt in my mind that an official cover-up of major proportions of the entire subject was imposed by some supra-governmental authority, when legitimate governmental agencies began to realize that the entire phenomenon was an astounding combination of the seemingly physical and yet unknown ultra-dimensional phenomena crossing into what could only be termed as a psychic, occultic, or even an ethereal domain, even far surpassing the realm of quantum physics. And by the way, quantum physics basically deals growingly with superdimensional areas. Science are proving right now that everything that we see is not necessarily of this. There are things in this world that we cannot see. That there are several dimensions coexisting at the same time. That's quantum physics, by the way. Yet we must take into consideration that such an extensive, long-lasting, and apparent successful cover-up may possibly exist not only in just one, but in several layers. Relegated authorities themselves within such layers may be incognizant of such a multi-leveled cover-up, much less of the intricate manipulation of information and disinformation taking place within such layers. Now, the real question is just who is manipulating whom? Now, ultimately, however, it could very well be the alleged entities themselves who may be the real culprits behind the deceptive scenario. There is no doubt in my mind that what I could only best describe as highly intelligent, but characteristically serpentine, and I'm saying it in double meaning, ultra-dimensional negative entities ingeniously materializing and conveniently posing as extraterrestrial aliens are presently here on Earth and are interacting with a deceived human agency such as that representing a de facto secret international government, under the guise of fulfilling the agreement set forth in the initial clandestine treaty involving a technology exchange program of some sort. These entities indeed may be deceiving the select scientists called upon to participate in such a program at secret locations such as at alleged S4 facilities in Area 51 in Nevada. It is my opinion that under such programs, the alleged entities may be primarily providing some type of parapsychological inspiration, that's the best word I can say, to our scientists in their attempt to duplicate the former's technology, which seems to surpass the realm of quantum physics. In the meantime, there seems to be some changes taking place in the governmental policies. That is the outer layer of the official cover-up. I'm convinced that the gradual propagation of alien presence by the government may be in the works already. The New World Order will no doubt capitalize on such a manipulated belief system that will result from such propagations in order to proceed on with their own agenda and plans. I'm convinced that 1992 seems to be a turning point in more ways than one. Now, will the government announce some startling information, or disinformation, I don't know, regarding the UFO cover-up? Will there be some kind of announcement regarding Area 51? And I feel like something is going to come out. More and more serious documentary and semi-documentary types of programs concerning UFOs and aliens seem to be lined up already to be shown on independent as well as national network television. Is this just a coincidence, or is the government slowly conditioning the public for some type of announcement or admission? The year 1992 will be very significant in that it is also the year of presidential election. Whether George Bush will be reelected or not, I don't know. As former CIA director, will he be the one who will initiate the inevitable announcement regarding the UFO cover-up? I don't know. By the way, locations of test flights of highly advanced unconventional crafts do not seem to be limited to just Area 51, ladies and gentlemen, in Nevada. Not limited there. Beginning late 1989, reports began to surface of mysterious triangular crafts in the night sky over Southern California's Tehachapis Mountains. Reports of silent manta ray-shaped aerial crafts maneuvering at high altitudes and great speed over such areas as Lancaster and Palmdale have since increased. The latest issue of Popular Mechanics magazine, December issue, definitely covers one aspect of this situation in Southern California. By the way, Southern California is unquestionably one of the most important regions for the nation's aerospace industry. In fact, some of the largest and most sensitive research and development centers in the nation are sprawled across the entire area north and northeast of the Los Angeles Basin, that is to say, north of the San Gabriel Mountains. It stretches east from the foothills of the Tehachapis Mountains range to Palmdale, Lancaster, and Mojave to the north, surrounds the entire expanse of Edwards Air Force Base, and extends northeast all the way to China Lake Naval Weapons Center. A major portion of these areas, needless to say, is located beneath restricted airspace. Recently, however, information from highly reliable sources, aerospace-connected industry sources, seem to indicate that the top secret projects involving new types of aircraft that incorporate, quote, novel propulsion systems, unquote, and exotic aerodynamic designs, such as wedge-shaped flying platforms and triangular as well as saucer-shaped craft, are being conducted by the government through the conglomerate effort of the so-called aerospace covert operations divisions. Is some significant development taking place in the nation's hub of aerospace industry? I think so. Are some advanced deep space vehicles secretly being manufactured and tested at secret facilities located under cover of restricted airspace north of the Los Angeles Basin? Are black world projects being covertly assigned to government contractors such as Northrop, Lockheed, McDonnell Douglas, and Rockwell in attempts to keep their clandestine activities even more inaccessible to public scrutiny? Now, whatever the answers may be, something seems to be taking place behind the wall of the dark veil of secrecy. By the way, there is already a covert Northrop facility located in the Antelope Valley area at the foothills of the Tehachapis Mountains, northwest of Lancaster, where testing of highly advanced craft similar to those at Area 51 in Nevada, but much smaller in the scale of operation, are allegedly being conducted. Based on increasing sighting reports, and I've been there many times, by nearby residents and other witnesses, it seems that remote-controlled surveillance orbs of some sort are also being tested at this facility. On June 29th of this year, a special combined investigative team composed of members of the Civilian Intelligence Network and a Santa Monica-based group called the Secret Saucer-Based Expeditions, directed by Mr. Gary Schultz, succeeded in videotaping and photographing the facility by chartering a private plane and daringly flying over it unannounced. Prior to the unprecedented flyover, several ground-level expeditions have been organized by these two groups to the perimeters of the facility. During the latter part of July, this was just last July, this July, in one of the several more expeditions conducted subsequent to the flyover, several members, including myself, had a rare opportunity one evening, this was in July, to observe what looked like a strange, gigantic, white, celestial strings of pearls in double layers maneuvering silently across the southern sky at approximately 45-degree angle, and I saw it, going from west to east and disappearing towards the direction of Edwards Air Force Base as we stood in awe about a half-mile away from the Northrop facility. Now, I must admit that I had never seen anything like that in my life, not even at Area 51. And a few days later, we learned that there were other independent sighting reports by multiple witnesses of the same object just about the same time, but 30 miles away, right by Edwards Air Force Base. Now, in late August of this year, ladies and gentlemen, members of both the Civilian Intelligence Network and the Secret Saucer-Based Expeditions were also dispatched to the perimeters of a covert operations center conducted by McDonnell Douglas, located in the area slightly northeast of Llano, California. As of this date, the latest audacious and unannounced flyover sponsored by the joint investigative team of the two groups took place on September 21st of this year. This time not only flying directly over the covert McDonnell Douglas facility near Llano, but also over a secret Lockheed Operations Center located in Helmdale. Now, it was during this occasion that the pilot of the chartered plane somehow consented to a last-minute request to fly over a suspicious-looking complex at the so-called Haystack Butte, west of Helmdale, but slightly inside restricted airspace. Now, by the way, aerial photos and video footages were again taken by the group. One such aerial photo of the Helmdale facility clearly shows a huge opening. It's right there. What appears to be a large portal to an underground facility of some sort, surrounded by 5 huge slanted adjoining concrete walls. A brand new 2-lane paved road on an incline seems to be leading right down into the facility. Whether they are under the aegis of Northrop, McDonnell Douglas, or Lockheed, there definitely seems to be several striking similarities in all of these facilities, namely the ubiquitous large structures that do not resemble any type of conventional aircraft hangars, apparent absence of any aircraft on or near the facilities whatsoever. Extremely short runways, I don't think they're runways, huge parabolic satellite-type dishes pointing towards these runways, strange antennas sticking out of diamond-shaped sliding lids like silo openings. You can see the photos later. And cranes, heavy-duty mobile cranes, and strangest of all, total absence of any activity whatsoever on the surface. Not even vehicular movement, nothing, at least during the daylight hours. Now this leads to the question, are activities being secretly conducted underground during daytime hours? I believe so. Were these facilities constructed just for advanced radar research and testing purposes, such as in stealth technology, or are they just a cover? And I believe that's just a cover for some above top secret operations that is being hidden to the public. Now, what is most important here, however, is the fact that local residents, ladies and gentlemen, to these areas, of these areas, frequently have reported seeing strange strobes of lights, as well as oval-shaped crafts of some kind darting in and around the facilities, often after sundown and especially during the wee hours of the morning. Is Area 51 extending over into Southern California or extending under? By the way, I'm presently in touch with top UFO research groups in Japan, and I'm also continuing to exchange intelligence information channeled through several US sources and elsewhere with researchers of similar vein in both countries. Also at this time, particularly in regards to Area 51, I'm keeping close contact with an actual intermediary mentioned in the beginning, who is connected to a Special Operations Center, connected to the United States Department of Navy. In late 1990, I founded the aforementioned civilian intelligence network based in Los Angeles and presently serving as its regional director. By the way, the civilian intelligence network is a loosely knit network of intelligence gatherers and analyzers with correspondents in several states that evaluate and exchange all pertinent information in order to inform and alert the public that there has been and still is a major cover-up going on regarding the existence of a sinister government within a government, as well as the sinister political, quasi-religious force that seems to be overseeing the international banking system, all of which is part and parcel of an emerging new world order, no question about it. The Civilian Intelligence Network has conducted many expeditions to Area 51 so far with tremendous results and findings. All of the expeditions so far has been conducted together with the Santa Monica-based Secret Saucer-based expeditions, whose director is Mr. Gary Schultz. By the way, for inquiries on any ongoing activities of both the Secret Saucer-based expeditions and the Civilian Intelligence Network, please write to Civilian Intelligence Network, P.O. Box 599, Gardena, California, 90248. Civilian Intelligence Network, P.O. Box 599, Gardena, California, 90248. And when writing, please include your contact telephone number. This is very important. Upon receiving initial inquiry, contact will be made by telephone. This is for discretion.
Hi, I'm John Lear. I'm a captain for a major cargo carrier. Please join me with Linda Moulton Howe on One-on-One.
My name is Bill Hamilton. I am a UFO researcher and investigator. I investigate UFO sightings, abduction cases, crash retrieval events, and underground activity. You can see me on tape with Linda Moulton Howe on One-on-One.
LA Times article of March 20th of this year described our second expedition to the outer perimeters of Area 51. Unfortunately, however, the March expedition, with LA Times reporter present with us, happened to be the only one of our joint expeditions so far that resulted in total disappointment as far as I'm concerned, but some of us are concerned, also due to the fact that no test flights were apparently observed, perhaps to cancellation because of inclement weather conditions, strong winds and intermittent rain. But however, our subsequent expedition to the Nevada test site in mid-May of 1991, and I'm going to tell you about it right now, was not only successful but resulted in an unprecedented incident. Approximately 18 members of the joint team including a reporter from a Japanese daily newspaper published in Los Angeles, Kashu Mainichi, witnessed and documented a test flight of a strange, brilliantly lit aerial craft moving silently above the jumbled hills early in the morning of May 16, 1991. It was the third joint expedition to the area. Now, the videotape footage some of you saw at Channel 11 News a couple of weeks ago, several weeks ago. The videotape footage shows the first early morning test flight of the unconventional aerial craft as it appeared exactly on schedule at 4:45 a.m. above the jumbled hills from the direction of S4 site, traveling towards the direction of Groom Lake. However, this is what happened. About an hour or so later, our caravan of 7 cars, upon returning from the immediate area, was brazenly pursued and dangerously harassed by an unmarked, dark military-type helicopter for more than 18 minutes or so. I have the pictures right there, as we frantically drove eastbound on Groom Lake towards Highway 375. Now, to the best of my knowledge, this was the first time ever that such a military helicopter appeared specifically to intimidate civilians on, mind you, public land, right outside the demilitarized zone near Area 51. Now, this incident, by the way, was subsequently reported in Los Angeles Times, June 16, 1991, in View section, after both Mr. Gary Schultz and myself filed an official complaint at the federal court, United States Federal Court in Los Angeles, detailing the illegal harassment involving dangerous maneuvering of military helicopter over civilian vehicles on public land. By the way, I'm right here, right now, risking my life. I don't care what's going to happen to me right now, but I have an urgency to be here to tell what I'm telling you right now. Exactly a week after the incident took place, a strange contact was made, by the way, in Rachel, Nevada, about 23 miles north of the outer perimeters of Area 51. This was in May, 1 week after the helicopter incident, by the way, when a young couple associated with the civilian intelligence network succeeded in meeting at an undisclosed location. A marine biologist nervously claiming to be employed at a compartmentalized complex within Area 51. The most interesting aspect of this discreet meeting was the initially hesitant but final admission by the biologist that his special training was in reptilian species. This was apparently verified when he further, although nervously, invited the couple to his temporary living quarters, not too far away from Rachel. As the couple entered his living room, they were astonished to see at least a dozen or so very impressive fish tanks of all sizes surrounding the entire room. Not all the fish tanks were filled with water and exotic types of fish. Now, several of the tanks indeed contained what appeared to be lizards, and in others were several small snakes of various colors. Now, the visit lasted less than half an hour or so when the biologist began drinking heavily and became rather incohesive when he began to explain the purpose of his invitation. As of this moment, we are still carefully monitoring this unusual contact. Several questions arise that must be weighed carefully. Now, what was the real purpose of such a disclosure by this alleged marine biologist? Was this a pre-planned, staged act by a government disinformation agent? What was the significance in his hesitant admission that he was a specialist in reptilian biology? Now, perhaps the most significant event concerning Area 51, ladies and gentlemen, took place on Wednesday, July 31st of this year, when an unprecedented, open to the public meeting was held at the only restaurant bar in Rachel. This special pre-announced meeting was co-sponsored by the Secret Saucer-based expeditions and the Civilian Intelligence Network, with special consent by the owners of the establishment, Mr. Pat and Joe Travis. The obvious reason for selecting this place was the fact that some compartmentalized workers employed in Area 51 connected projects do actually frequent this restaurant bar after completing their routine assignments. Many of the workers, by the way, reside in nearby communities such as Ash Springs, Alamo, and even Tonopah. The unprecedented gathering was held with the specific purpose of exposing to the nearby community residents what may truly be going on within the confines of Area 51. By the way, more than 85 persons many of them local residents, and undoubtedly some of them even workers at the site, crowded into the restaurant bar at 8 p.m. for a 2-hour presentation that included speeches and statements by Mr. Gary Schultz and myself, testimonies of witness to strange sightings near Groom Lake, and display of many photos of unidentified crafts taken near Area 51, and showing of video footages and a special plea issued by Mr. Gary Schultz to the Area 51 workers to come forth and help expose to the public the truth behind the secrecy. By the way, it was interesting to note that during the entire meeting, several Lincoln County Sheriff Patrol cars, as well as 2 state highway patrols, were being positioned right outside the restaurant's parking area, which was filled with cars, trucks, and campers. An unusual sight for such a tiny town, particularly on a weekday evening. Now, it is our knowledge now from highly reliable inside sources, and I will show you the document momentarily, that all types of test flight activities, ladies and gentlemen, had been canceled at the test site 3 days prior to and up to 3 days after the meeting. But according to the document, it was 5 days prior to the meeting and 5 days after the meeting. I will read from the document momentarily. Among some surprising guests, by the way, that showed up at the meeting, we didn't specifically invite personally, but some among the surprising guests that showed up at the meeting were Robert Lazar, former government physicist that claimed to have worked at the SS-4 site within Area 51. And Mr. John Lear, son of William P. Lear, developer of the Learjet and renowned pilot who once flew for CIA missions during the Vietnam War. He was present. He showed up. Gene Huff, Lazar's close friend, whom I had personally interviewed in 1990 with Nippon Television Crew, he showed up. And to that meeting, Mr. George Knapp of KLOS TV, a Las Vegas TV newscaster who had produced some excellent in-depth programs on the UFO cover-up, he showed up. And by the way, most of all, we were shocked to see Mr. William Cooper, former United States Naval Intelligence officer whose controversial pronouncements have stirred the entire UFO research community ever since his going public in 1989. We didn't expect him to show up. Now, right before the meeting, he was quoted to have said that he just, quote, happened, unquote, to be there in the area at the time of the unprecedented meeting. The presence of all these well-known personalities all in one place was just awe-inspiring, to say the least. I had never seen anything like that before. However, not a single one of these luminaries consented to speak extemporaneously in front of the microphone. Neither Bob Lazar, William Cooper, John Lear, George Knapp, so on. They had all come just to, quote, observe, unquote, the event. Now, was this all total coincidence, or did someone else plan this event for a special reason? Or was it just another example of a routine high strangeness that surrounds constantly the entire UFO phenomenon? Now, finally, it's my conclusion that under the guise of initially separating the world into 3 basic economic, political, and geophysical sections, and this is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. I have the chart right there. Those in real control will attempt to bring the 3 into one unit, the New World Order. Now, there's a plan right now to divide the world into 3 economic spheres. The first step is to bring about the complete unification of Western Europe, the EC, which will be accomplished on December 31st of 1992, next year. I say that this EC union of 1992, in essence, will symbolize a spiritual revival of sort of the ancient Roman Empire. That's all I can say. Now, it is no coincidence that since late 1989 and continuing up to the present, there has been a significant increase in the number of UFO sightings throughout Western Europe, particularly in Belgium, Spain, and Italy, and sightings are ongoing, especially in Belgium. Now, Brussels, by the way, capital of Belgium, is where the official headquarters of EC is located. It is no coincidence that the Olympic Games will also be held in Barcelona, Spain, in 1992, the year of the 500th anniversary of the sailing of Columbus from Spain to the New World. It will certainly be the focal point from where a powerful, united Europe proudly present its new image to the world. No question about it. Second step will be for the United States and Canada, with Mexico participating in a free trade agreement, to form one bloc. namely the North American Economic Bloc, and it's beginning to happen, ladies and gentlemen. And the remaining bloc will be formed principally by the emerging Far Eastern Economic Union, led by Japan, technologically and economically, and China in the future militarily. This Far Eastern bloc, I believe, is destined to later challenge the European leadership militarily at the end of the 7-year duration of the New World Order by advancing toward the Middle East. Now, the three blocs will eventually be consolidated in one unit to bring about the New World Order, by the way, meantime. The international banking system, which is the financial arm of a de facto secret world government, seems to be succeeding rapidly in the realization of this tripartite endeavor, commonly known as trilateralism. This is known as trilateralism. And where then will the Soviet Union fit into this picture? It will most likely be, as it seems to be happening at this time, that the Soviet Union will have been dissolved into a loosely knit federation consisting of independent republics, the major part of which will be dominated by highly nationalistic Russian Federation. The fastest growing sector, however, of the entire Soviet Union, as well as that of the Russian Federation itself, is undoubtedly, and this is important, the Islamic fundamentalist minorities. And unquestionably, this fact will affect the future foreign policy of the Federation, no question about it, particularly in regards to Israel and the Middle East. At the present time, I see, by the way, no progress economically for the Soviet Union, and no substantial aid will come from the United States nor from Japan. The situation will get worse for the Soviet Union. We must bear in mind that a restructured Russian Federation will play a major role in the Arab Confederacy's sudden move towards Israel in 1995, as I stated in the beginning. By the way, in the meantime, the world of 1992, for the first time in close to half a century, and particularly for the United States, will temporarily be free from any potential military threat. That's happening right now. Now, will peace finally arrive? Will the long-awaited Messiah, now there are millions of Jews worldwide that's waiting for the Messiah, no question about it, especially Orthodox Jews, or Christ. There are millions of Christians awaiting their Savior, Christ, or Imam Mahdi. Now there are millions of Islamics awaiting their Savior, Imam Mahdi. It's a phenomenon. I don't think it's a coincidence. Now, or Lord Maitreya. Now, to the millions of Buddhists worldwide, actually, many Buddhists believe that their Lord Maitreya will appear. Now, finally make his appearance. Now, is this coincidence or what? Now, it seems to me that there seems to be some air of expectancies everywhere. I'm convinced that whoever is in control of this force is going to manipulate the belief systems of each of these major religions to fit the scenario that they are beginning to believe in. It is precisely at this interim period that a new external threat will be created, and it's going to be created. That is to say, the big push towards the formation of the New World Order will be expedited by conveniently creating an external threat from elsewhere, and that will be just the beginning of amazing things to happen. And once again, for inquiries on any ongoing activities of both the secret saucer-based expeditions and the Civilian Intelligence Network, please write to Civilian Intelligence Network, P.O. Box 599, Gardena, California, 90248. P.O. Box 599, Gardena, California, 90248. And when writing, please include your phone number. Upon receiving initial inquiry, contact will be made by telephone primarily. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to, before I read the document, let me tell you that our calendar system right now is completely messed up. We're not actually living in 1991, per se. I'm convinced that our calendar system is anywhere from 4 to 6 years behind. I just read an article in a magazine, I think only magazine, some magazine, that now they believe that possibly the birth of Christ could be maybe 5 BC. In other words, our calendar system is possibly 5 years off. And I think you can imagine what this signifies. Lastly, by the way, I'm going to read from this document that I received in confidentially, and this says right here, memorandum for record. As the Department of the United States Air Force, 28th of July 1991, 0900 hours, memorandum for record, page 103. From is blacked out. Status is blocked out. Subject blocked out. Attention, Commanders Net, AFOSI Nellis Division, 20th, 64th, 65th, 527th Division, 5021st TO Aggressor Squadron Commanders, 57th FW Commander, 552nd TOF Commander, 554th OSW Commander, 554th CSS, 4440 TFTG Commander, etc. Red Flag MOC, Dart East MOC, Dart South MOC, Sally Corridor MOC, Pahudi Mesa MOC, Groom Lake MOC, Dreamland MOC, and at the end it has Wackenhut Special Security Division. And memorandum says this, page 203, effective immediately for all South-based operations and special sectors. A shutdown has hereby been ordered for all South-based operations and special sector programs. Special conditions, procedures for sequence blacked out are now in effect. All enlisted personnel and civilian personnel are to be briefed on a blacked out right here scenario on a need-to-know basis only. All special service divisions, special sciences divisions, and executive security teams must be or will be under lockdown conditions or on restricted LRRP procedures. On July 31st, 1991 at 20:00 hours, a civilian organized event is to be held in the town of Rachel, Nevada. The individuals who have organized the event are familiar to security team personnel that have had prior contact with primaries and / or the supporters. Primary subjects are identified as follows. Has my name, Norio Hayakawa / founder of Civilian Intelligence Network, and he has my home address. Number 2, Gary Clark / AKA Schultz / founder of Secret Saucer-based Expedition, it has his home address. Both of the subjects operate their organization from a post office box in the city of Gardena, California. It's right here in this document. Please see, in parentheses, prior special advisory notifications. Both subjects and their support personnel will be in advisory perimeter within a 48-hour time period of this notice. All area personnel are to remain on advisory alert until 5 August, 055 hours, and proceed with caution if approached by anyone believed to be affiliated with these groups. These subjects may also be accompanied by individuals from the Nippon Television Network or the Tokyo Broadcasting Service of Japan, and by the way, a TBS part of it was there. In addition to various print media personnel from various assignments, both national and international. All base commanders and security team personnel are to instruct subordinates concerned to report any harassment either to themselves or any other base personnel that they may become aware of. Now, failure to do so in a timely manner will result in immediate disciplinary procedures with no exceptions. Next paragraph. This event is to be held at the Little Ailey Inn, formerly known as Rachel's Bar and Grill. Mr. and Mrs. Travis have granted permission to these individuals for the use of the facilities on the evening of 31 July 1991. And I don't care what happens to me, I'm just going to read it. All base special operations and sectors concerned are to be rescheduled to an assignment date after 0500 hours on 5 August. And next section is blacked out. Blacked out special security services are hereby instructed to commence with proper procurement and enforcement of blacked out right here sections and practices during this time period. It is expected that members of these groups as well as other fringe elements will remain in and around the general areas of concern for as many as a few days prior to and following this scheduled event. All personnel, both military and civilian, who are believed to be or known to be communicating or corresponding in any way or by any method will be considered to be in violation of the special security advisory and thereby charged with willful disregard of a special security advisory and be subject to immediate arrest and prosecution for violation of the National Security Act. It's blacked out. The decimal portion is blacked out, by the way. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to give to every single one of you, I'm sure I have, for free, 6-page maps on how to get to Area 51, how to get to secret Northrop facility areas, how to get to the Douglas area, how to get to these places, what not to do, what to do. I'm going to give you, because I think this is urgent. This is very urgent, and by the way, it's my understanding that the Office of Special Investigations at Nellis are here this weekend, not only because of what I've been saying, but because of another incident. There is a gentleman that is associated with the United States Navy SEAL Special Operations, claimed to me, that has been discharged about 4 or 5 weeks ago from Nellis. And he allegedly was working at the S4 facility. Now, he has sought some kind of asylum in Tucson, and he has some photos of Defense Secretary Dick Cheney standing in one of several the hangars at S4's facility. There's supposed to be 50 photos, and he is seeking protection. And I was asked today that assistance of the United States naval personnel. However, I'm not sure what's going to happen, and I could care less, because I know that the OSI knows about us. Right now, they know what I'm doing right now today. They knew what I was doing yesterday. The Office of Special Investigation, of course, is at Nellis as well as at any Air Force base. Plus, I wrote, basically, to the other personnel at Nellis Air Force Base with full documentation of my filing of the United States with the United States Attorney's Office about illegal harassment. I could care less, because I'm convinced that we're living in one of the most exciting times. Something is about to happen within the next 6 months, possibly, or at least within the next 12 months. Something is going to take place that will change and that will affect every single one of us. And that's why I'm not interested in writing a book or anything like that. There's no time. And that's why I want everybody to go to these areas of covert operations. It's there. No use just talking about Area 51. You have to go there in person, and you can see for yourself what's going on. And please definitely take these maps, make many copies as possible, and give it to anybody you want. Please. By the way, it has our group's PO box address, so okay. And thank you very much. And before final comment, right on 1 week before the unprecedented meeting and Rachel, there was a helicopter crash at Area 18, which is not too far away from Area 51. And part of the security teams, Wackenhut Security, hired by the Department of Energy, and EG&G is listed right here, by the way, crashed. And there is some indirect confirmation that some kind of an attempt was made to bring out some document or something from that area. Plus, it was also on a Wednesday, 1 week before the unprecedented meeting was to be held. I think they might have some connection. I don't know what the connection is, but I'm still waiting for any relevant information. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my presentation regarding this amazing phenomena, the subject of Area 51, and also the covert operations in Southern California, and what's coming in 1992 as the beginning of the turnaround of events in history. We are presently conducting continuous ongoing investigations into this matter. We're sending expeditions to Area 51. We're sending groups, teams to Southern California, where there are covert operations taking place right now. And it's my desire that more people know about this area, the better it is for all of us. The better it is because the government's announcement will be quickened by our activities. Those of you who are interested in going to these areas, we're conducting all these expeditions, and please contact us. And you may write to the Civilian Intelligence Network, P.O. Box 599, Gardena, California, 90248. Civilian Intelligence Network, P.O. Box 599, Gardena, California, 90248. And when writing, please include your phone number because this is very important. Many times we cannot contact right away, and the only way to contact for us is by telephone. And once again, if you write to us, we'll contact you right away and we'll let you know when our next expeditions to these areas will be. Thank you very much.